Let me hear you if you believe in public education.
At issue this week, the controversial plan to improve the school district of Philadelphia, a plan that would lead to the closure of more than a dozen schools. It's been met with anger and protests, and I'm speaking about it with both the district superintendent and the head of the teachers union. Budget impact. New Jersey's new governor is about to announce how she wants to spend state dollars. Where could cuts come from?
NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. The school district of Philadelphia's nearly $3 billion 10-year facilities master plan has been met with some opposition from students, parents, and teachers. Under the plan, the district would modernize almost 160 school buildings and expand career and tech programs, as well as arts and music curriculums. But it would also close or merge some schools. The plan presented to the school district would close 18 schools. The changes would start to take effect for the 2027-28 school year. I sat down with the district superintendent, Dr. Tony Watlington, this past week to discuss the plan. Are you considering recommending any additional changes to that plan?
At this point, we released a draft facilities master plan entitled Accelerating Opportunity 5 weeks ahead of taking it to the Board of Education on February 26th. We heard lots of feedback following engagement with more than 4,000 Philadelphians face-to-face, 90 listening and learning sessions, and almost 14,000 completed surveys. And after hearing all that feedback, we made a few changes that was reflective of that feedback. And so now we have a $2.8 billion facilities master plan on the Board of Education's desk for its consideration. And we think it's a good plan, not a perfect plan. And we certainly encourage our Board of Education to strongly consider it. We don't have any additional changes at this point.
You don't have any additional changes at this point. Do you think that this is the final version?
This is my final recommendation to the Board of Education. It's a $2.8 billion plan. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reduce the number of schools in this city, in the school district, that has poor or unsatisfactory ratings from 85 to 0. And I want to underscore 0. And this plan will provide resources to modernize 159 of our nearly 250 school campuses.
When it comes to the facilities themselves, will every student who is moving schools under this plan end up going to a school that is in a better condition than the one they're in now?
I can tell you that greater than 90% of displaced students under this plan would end up in a school with better reading and or math performance. I can tell you we've been very intentional about trying to get students in buildings that have better building ratings and conditions. It's not a perfect plan, but when I think about 90% of children being in a school building where academic achievement is either higher in reading or math, and most of the others are as comparable to what they're getting now, again, I would say we ought not make a good plan the enemy of a perfect plan. And we've got to do something in this city to address the long-standing problem of some schools that are sitting majority of the seats empty, classrooms empty, and we've got other schools in our city that are bursting at the seams.
Let me make
it
sure
will require some sacrifice.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying, though. So will some students who are in a building now go to a building that's in worse shape?
I don't think we've set up for kids to go to buildings in worse shape. Some of them are not significantly better. A number of them will be moderately or better. But will they all be better? For the most part, almost all of our kids will end up in places where they're either getting better reading and or math performance.
I'm just talking the facility, though.
Okay.
So will every student who is moving to a new building go to a building that's in better shape than the one they're in now?
The lion's share will. I need to
but
double
not
check.
all of them.
Braxton, how do we take that one? Because that's a question I want to make sure that I fact check that one.
Yeah.
A district spokesperson said they would look into that data, and we continued our interview.
You're going to check on that statistic and find out for us. Should every student who has to move schools go to a school that is where the facility is in better condition?
Under ideal circumstances, every child ought to be able to go to a school with better building ratings, better facilities, and higher achievement. Let me tell you why in the school district of Philadelphia, which is located in America's 6th largest city, that's a bit challenging. We have so many old buildings, and we've had decades of historic underfunding. And so it's not easy to just move and guarantee every kid to go to a better building because we've had such historic disinvestment. And so there's just not this huge supply of nice new buildings just sitting there ready for children in Philadelphia. You just made the point about why it is so important that we must have a long-range master facilities plan, and we can't continue to kick this can down the road. Well, we can choose to kick the can down the road, but children don't benefit.
Let me ask you about the investment, because this is a $2.8 billion plan. You're looking for $1.8 billion of government or philanthropic investment. What is your deadline to get that 1.8, to have that money secured?
Once our Board of Education takes action on this plan at an appropriate time, we will be recommending to the board that we move in earnest in an advocacy mood with both our legislators and to the extent possible with philanthropic sources as well.
But in order to start this, the 27-28 school year, when do you have to have that money committed? What's your, I mean, you got to have a deadline.
Well, we think it will be an ongoing, it'll take some time to engage with legislators, but for the $1 billion that we intend to foot of this cost ourselves through our 2-year bond borrowing program, we intend to move forward as early as fiscal year 27-28 with a list of prioritized projects given the resources that we can commit from the district.
Ultimately, the entire plan, in your mind, this makes the district better, right?
Over time, it gives children more high-quality academic resources, more high-quality extracurricular resources, just like kids in some of the bedroom suburban districts have. And I think that our kids absolutely deserve it. But they won't get it if we don't make some sacrifice somewhere.
And let me talk to you about that sacrifice, just to be honest with people, because this plan may make the district better 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, a generation down the road. Yeah. What is it going to be like for students and families and staff that are impacted in these few years of the process? To be honest with them, what's this going to be like?
To be perfectly clear and transparent, I believe the biggest impact will be on any children and families who are displaced by school closures, if that be the decision of the Board of Education to accept my unfortunate but absolutely necessary recommendation. When children move from one school to another, it can be a huge sacrifice. It can have social and emotional implications. It can have academic implications. In fact, when our district closed schools in 2012-13, I believe 30 or so, the research shows that the children's academic performance went down and their daily attendance rates went down. We're being very intentional and sensitive as we think about these recommended closures, and we intend to pay close attention. We intend to have a dedicated staff in a transition office that has a job to be a one-stop shop to support our displaced students and their families. If they need help with social and emotional well-being, if they need help with transportation, if they need help with daily attendance, academic tutors, anything that it takes, we are going to personally have staff that report up to the superintendent's office to wrap our arms around any displaced students and their families.
So, especially for those displaced students and their families, are you essentially asking those students to sacrifice for the long-term good of the district?
I'm saying that the school district of Philadelphia and the city has some tough choices to make.
Back to that question I asked about whether all students moving schools would end up at a better facility. Well, the district sent us information saying in part that the plan would ensure that 100% of impacted students are reassigned to schools with comparable or better academic outcomes and or building conditions. You can catch more from my interview with Dr. Watlington on the latest episode of my Battleground Politics podcast. It's streaming now wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll hear from a leader opposed to the plan. The teachers union is pushing to stop the school closures. I'm sitting down with the head of that union coming up.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Can you imagine if you fully funded schools like Lincoln Hall instead of closing and merging schools that seem alike?
A student at Lincoln High School was among those speaking out this past week at a Day of Action event to oppose a school district improvement plan that would lead to the closure of her school and more than a dozen others. Before the break, we brought you my interview with the School District of Philadelphia Superintendent Dr. Tony Watlington about the plan that he is pitching for the district. Now, the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers has raised concerns about that plan. I'm joined in studio by President of the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, Arthur Steinberg. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity.
What do you want people to know about this plan? Why are you concerned?
We're concerned that there's kind of a rush to judgment on this. There has not been enough data provided to justify the closing for any single school yet. So what we are requesting of the district is, since next year's a planning year anywhere, hit the pause button and provide data so all the stakeholders can understand why it was determined that their school would be closed, as say, opposed to another one.
This plan did change from what was initially released. What does that tell you, the fact that they did make a revision?
Well, it tells me two things. Number one, at least they were listening to some of the feedback they got back. But number two, and more importantly, that they realized that maybe that they have not researched and analyzed the data completely enough to reach a final decision.
Ideally, you would like the school board to put a pause on things, but if they don't, are there specific things that you are focused on that you would like to see changed within the plan?
Not for any of the individual schools, but I think in an overall view, what we want to see is show your work. When you went to school, right, teachers always said, show your work. They have not provided data or justification for any of the movements. So we're not aware of why this school's going to close, that one's going to stay open, why you're going to move office space into this school and move the students somewhere else. We're just not aware of how they applied the criteria to make the decisions.
There were, the superintendent has talked about the process of coming up with this plan and the feedback that they got. I know when you look at it, they'd have like advisory committees. You're even listed in there. What was that process like for you? What was your involvement?
It was mostly a chance to observe. Listen, we made very clear to them at the beginning, by putting us on an advisory committee, it doesn't mean we give our stamp of approval to the final product. In fact, they were also very clear in telling the people in the advisory committee, we're going to listen to you here, but you're not going to have any say in the final published product. It'll be what it is.
Did you raise flags along the way, or did you know what was happening along the way, I guess?
We really weren't aware of any of the steps that were going to be taken. To give you an example of one of our issues now with the way it was, they had, say, 15 months to prepare this plan, right? They released it on January 22nd and initially wanted to have a vote a month later. Then the day before the board meeting, they released more data that ostensibly was going to tell people what their schools were going to look like in the future. One of the big shortcomings and failings of it right now is they have not told people in the communities what their schools are going to look like at the end of this process. I'll give you an example. Base Martin is supposed to have extra space built on. If anybody's familiar with where that building is, I'm not sure where they're going to put it. But they have not told the community, the staff, the parents, exactly what they're going to add to that building, what it's going to look like. Nobody has any idea what the finished product is, and it's a 10-year plan.
How are your members who are in some of the buildings that are slated to close or where things are slated to be merged? What are you hearing from them right now? What are they telling you about sort of how they're absorbing this and what their plans are?
They love their schools. They do not want to leave. You're aware of the decrepit, deplorable conditions we have in a lot of our schools now, right? That's essentially one of the reasons districts claiming that they want to go ahead with this plan to improve the conditions. Some of the worst buildings as far as infrastructure goes, the people, they don't want to leave. So that says a lot about what it means to them. My great fear is that this is going to cause an exodus of students and teachers and paraprofessionals.
If this plan does not go forward, are you okay with building conditions in some of these schools where the conditions aren't great staying the way they are?
No, they still have the money to fix the buildings. There's no reason not to fix and invest them as opposed to closing them.
All right, we'll continue watching this. Arthur Steinberg, thank you so much for your time.
Oh.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
NBC10 will have continuing coverage of the school district's plan and any changes on the way. Go to NBC10.com for the latest updates and to see the full plan. Budget impact. In just days, New Jersey's new governor is set to deliver her first budget proposal. How could her plan affect Garden State residents? We'll get analysis from a local expert coming up.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
On Tuesday, New Jersey Governor Mikie Sherrill is set to deliver her first budget address since taking office in January. She has warned New Jersey is facing a structural deficit. I spoke to the governor about her budget plan when she visited South Jersey late last month.
When it comes to decisions that you make, any cuts that you have to make, are these going to be things that people should expect they're going to feel?
What we're looking at and what we'll announce in my March 10th budget address is how we can make sure that where we're investing people's dollars, that's what I regard, taxpayer dollars are people's hard-earned money, that we are investing it as a state in a way that is going to get returns for working people, that is going to create opportunity in our state. And I think sometimes we've just had these programs go on, and we're not asking for metrics, we're not asking for results. So what we're going to do is, and what we have been doing, is taking a hard look at this budget, and we're going to make sure that we are demanding that programs work for people and demanding that, we come together and fix problems.
It's not clear which programs might change. The governor has said she would not raise taxes. To talk about what we might expect in the governor's budget, I'm joined now by Stephen Danley. He's the director of the Center for Urban Research and Education at Rutgers University, Camden. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's set the table here for what the governor, Mikie Sherrill, New Jersey's new governor, is facing. What are her options when it comes to saving money?
Sure. Well, I think the big thing is Governor Sherrill is trying to do a really difficult thing, which is close a structural deficit, figure out how to make the budget balanced without raising taxes. And she's made a really clear line. You look at the transition documents, more revenues, but no new taxes. And that means getting creative. I think the biggest way to do that is by changing the way that the state of New Jersey program runs, by changing who's eligible for the program.
And just for folks who are not familiar, this is a program, a property taxes relief program for seniors.
Right. So if you're 65 and over and you earn up to $500,000, you have this opportunity to get money back from your property taxes. It can be up to $6,500. If you drop that eligibility criteria from $500,000 to $150,000 a year, you can save about $500 million. That puts a big dent into the $3 billion budget deficit, but it doesn't really get you all the way there.
I asked her about whether or not the cuts were going to be something that people really feel. Do you think that there is a way to avoid that and have them, take around the edges, or do you think that people should expect that they will feel it?
I think in year one you can avoid it, but not in a way that's sustainable. So you can, change eligibility for Stay New Jersey. You can close
which some seniors would feel.
Seniors would feel, but they feel it at a high income level, right? Mm-hmm. So in a place where, and this is a big debate in New Jersey, are millionaires going to leave if their taxes go up, right? And the data is largely no. So you'll feel it, but it won't be the people feeling it because you can't afford gas, you can't afford groceries. And similarly, you could close the sales tax loophole for yachts. You could do a few things on the margin that hit a population it's easier to absorb this. You could close loopholes for corporate taxes. But I don't think you can get all the way there, and that probably means spending down some of the budget surplus. There's a $7 billion surplus that's scheduled to run out next year. So if you take some from the surplus, you cut around the edges, you can avoid people feeling it in the pocketbook or breaking the affordability promises from the campaign. And that lets you spend the next year working on the big issues. How can you make healthcare less expensive? Can you have price fixing within the healthcare system? Can you change things in a way that'll make it so the structural deficit isn't there every year?
All right, well, we'll be watching. Stephen Danley, the director of the Center for Urban Research and Education at Rutgers University Camden. Thanks so much for your perspective and for breaking it down for us.
Thanks for having me.
This is NBC 10 at Issue.
Building transparency and trust in local elections. That's the goal of Philadelphia's new Election Academy. City commissioners launched the effort this past week. The new initiative aims to help Philadelphians understand how elections work and how to participate in the voting process with confidence.
Transparency is powerful. When people can observe the process, ask questions, and even serve within it, trust grows. And when trust grows, our democracy is stronger.
The Election Academy will kick off with an event on March 21st at the Commissioner's Warehouse on Roosevelt Boulevard. That does it for this edition of NBC 10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.